Welcome back everyone to another episode of Vegetarian Cooking with JJ. In this week's episode, I'm making vegan gluten-free cocoa cinnamon buns. Find out how this comes together and we achieve that nice soft texture along with a wonderful flavor combination. And this should truly take you to cloud 9, 10, or even 11. I'm really excited to get started on this recipe and of course try it in the end. So without further ado, let's head over to the kitchen and get cooking! To start off with, I'm sifting 2.5 cups of gluten-free all-purpose flour into this bowl. I'm using a combination of Bob's Red Mill and the Dainty brand. And I'm adding 1/2 cup of raw sugar. And I'll add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Add in 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg and 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. And I'll pop in 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Add 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum. I'm warming up this vegan milk here, 1 cup's worth, and I'm using almond milk. And I'll be using 1/4 cup of Earth Balance. We just need to warm it up to soften it up. And I'll be using 1/4 cup's worth of our just egg. And 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Allow your plant-based milk to cool. It should be 100 degrees Fahrenheit and no more than 110. If your milk is too hot, it will kill the yeast. I'm adding 1/4 teaspoon of raw sugar to this bowl, adding the 2 packs of yeast. I'm adding our melted Earth Balance into our vegan milk. Give it a stir and then pour it over the yeast. Give it 5 minutes or so to activate. You will see that it will start to bloom, and that is a good sign. Whisk up your dry ingredients so they're evenly incorporated. And then we'll add our wet ingredients. I'm whisking in our yeast mixture. And adding the cornstarch. And then our just egg. I'm going to continue mixing it with a spatula and then I'll transition to kneading it with my hands. You want to knead this very well. After you've kneaded the dough until everything's evenly incorporated, you want to be sure to knead it for a minimum of 10 minutes. This is especially important with gluten-free dough. It is better for this gluten-free dough to be a little on the sticky side, so resist the temptation to add flour. Near the end of kneading, I'm adding only a couple of tablespoons of our gluten-free flour. That's it. I find the dough rises best when it's covered tightly with saran wrap. In addition to this, I also place a damp cloth over top. It traps in all the moisture. Let this dough rise for an hour or until it's double in size. This is dependent on the warmth of your place. Now our dough is ready to roll out. I have a floured surface here. We'll want to roll it out and form it into a rectangular shape. Along the way, I'm using my hands to create the rectangle. You don't want the dough to be too thick or too thin. You want it just right. The thickness should be 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick. For filling, I'm using a 1/4 cup of cinnamon, 3 tablespoons of cocoa, a 3/4 cup's worth of our softened earth balance, and our brandy, our St. Remy brand. I'll be using a 1/2 ounce worth. In this bowl here, we'll mix the cocoa and the cinnamon. Make sure it's evenly incorporated. Add in the softened earth balance and our brandy. Try to mix it as evenly as possible. Now with our spatula, we're spreading on our filling onto our rectangular piece of dough here. Our dough is on parchment paper, so I'm going to use the parchment paper to some degree to help with the rolling process. The long side is facing us as we roll it upwards. Make sure your oven is preheated to 350 Fahrenheit. I'm using a fresh, clean piece of floss to score our rolls. Once you're satisfied with the marks, you can cut all the way through with the floss. You can see that I trimmed off the ends just for aesthetics. Make sure the dishes or pan that you use is well oiled. I'm covering these dishes with foil to keep them moist as they cook. I'm baking them for 25 minutes covered, and then for the final 10 minutes, we'll uncover them. I'll return to the oven in 25 minutes. Cinnamon buns as we know them today are said to have originated in Sweden. They're also known as kanelbulla in Sweden. And since 1999, they've had a big cinnamon bun festival every October 4th. But cinnamon buns only became popular after World War I, when food restrictions and food rations were lifted. But it was only seen in the 20s in bakeries because cinnamon was still quite expensive. It wasn't until the 1950s when Swedish people started baking cinnamon buns in their homes. And it was a perfect thing to be enjoyed even to this very day for fika. Now, if you've never heard of fika, check out my other video, and it's an ultimate berry crumble dessert popular in Sweden. Although there's still much debate on the true origin of cinnamon buns, the general consensus is Northern Europe or Scandinavia. There's even something quite similar to a cinnamon bun that can be traced back to ancient Greece. Now it's time to remove the foil for the final round of baking. For the final round of baking, you may want to brush on some vegan milk. We'll come back to our oven in 10 minutes. In the meantime, we'll prepare the icing. I'll be using the Violife cream cheese alternative. And we'll be using 3/4 cups worth of icing sugar. I prefer the wholesome brand. Add your 1/2 cup of vegan cream cheese to the icing sugar. And I'm adding 2 tablespoons of softened earth balance. I'm adding 1 teaspoon of concentrated vanilla extract. And 1 tablespoon of our vegan milk. I'm using a fork to break it all up and mix it to start with. As things progress, you can switch over to a whisk. No doubt this is a sugar-forward recipe, but I have to mention that cinnamon is a spice that helps to stabilize blood sugar. Now, this doesn't mean it's going to completely counter the effects of the sugar, but it's a good thing to know. Cinnamon is also anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial. But the Swedish version actually doesn't contain the icing, so it's lower on the sugar in that regard. And also they contain cardamom usually in their cinnamon buns, but I wanted to opt for the cocoa. Give the cinnamon buns 15 minutes to cool before icing them. They will still be warm enough for the icing to melt into them. And just make sure they're cool enough to eat. It's that time again, everyone. I get to try our delicious gluten-free vegan chocolate cinnamon bun. It's gonna be messy. The texture turned out perfect. It's nice and soft. Wonderful combination of flavors here. So there you have it, everyone. Another delicious recipe that is not only vegan, but also gluten-free and amazing. So pop them in your recipe booklets. And remember to take 1 second right now to hit that thumbs up button. It's an easy way to support my channel. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications, hit that bell icon so you don't miss a single video. Let's make 2024 your most delicious year yet. There's gonna be a new video popping up every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, so you don't wanna miss it. This is JJ signing off, keeping things interesting in my kitchen and in yours. Bon appetit.